Hi, welcome to this presentation on institutional logics at play in mobility as a service, MAS. This research was done with Karin Skill and myself, Hugo Guyader. Karin will come in a few minutes to continue the presentation. She's a research fellow at TEMATE research unit at Linköping University on technology and social change, as well as the Department of Management and Engineering, like myself. And Karin has expertise in topics of sustainable development and digitalization in society, and she's interested in the challenges related to political science, like digital inclusion and civic participation in democracy. And I'm myself a senior lecturer in marketing with research expertise in the sharing economy phenomenon, this new paradigm, and I've been looking particularly at the shared mobility sector. And I'm interested in the tensions between the economic and the social aspects of peer-to-peer exchange facilitated by online platforms, apps. So today we are going to tell you a bit about mobility as a service, MaaS, as it said. And so it's defined as multimodal and sustainable mobility services addressing customers' transportation needs by integrating planning and payment in a one-stop shop principle. So the idea is that it's basically a platform, digital platform that is packaged and embodied into a platform, a smartphone app, mobile app that is user-friendly, and it combines different transportation services, mobility services from a diversity of both public and private actors. And these actors can be old actors like the bus company in a city, or new actors like e-scooter services. And the idea is to provide a unique and attractive mobility solution to each customer needs. Each citizen of a city may have different mobility needs, and they can be addressed in a unique way, in one on one ticket or on one subscription. So it is considered a tool to increase sustainable traveling, a tool to promote sustainability. And what I find interesting in particular is that MaaS is basically anchored in this paradigm of providing access instead of ownership, of facilitating and promoting using things instead of buying things, just using them when we need, when like on demand, and mostly based on this rental based paradigm instead of acquisition based. We don't need to buy everything. So in this sharing economy, people like commuters would not necessarily need to possess their own need of transportation, to not own a car and use the car as much as they would in the past. And instead, they would get access to car sharing or bike sharing through landlords or through their employers, or even on their private life, like basically buying themselves a subscription service. If we talk a bit about Linköping, because this is the focus in our study, it is quite a large city in the sense that it's quite scattered. So a majority of the trips happen by car. Most mobility happens by car, about 60% of all trips. And there is a problem that 1/3 of the CO2 emissions in the city comes from the transportation sector. So the car has a big impact. And so the idea of the city and the Linköping Commune, the municipality, is to achieve some kind of environmental goal by reducing the amount of trips made by car. And they want to be a carbon neutral city by 2025, and to reduce the amount of car usage from 60% to 40% by 2030. And to do all of this, to reduce car usage, gradually they've developed different plans or different initiatives that started first with the green travel plans in 2017. Then they had the sustainable mobility challenge in 2019, that finished in 2019. And nowadays they have the mobility as a service. So just to understand where this is coming from, mass in Linköping and where it's going, we kind of have to introduce a bit what has been happening in the last 3 years. And so in our study, we will mostly focus on mass. But yeah, it is important to understand the 3 years behind it, because the actors that are developing mass in Linköping have been the same one collaborating over time, like the local network ecosystem of mobility. And so the idea for Linköping Commune, for the municipality, is that this mass project, it is what is necessary now, the next step to take in order to achieve this goal for environmental sustainability. And the whole idea is to make the city even more attractive, like accessible from a mobility point of view, but also more sustainable in its image, that makes an efficient use of existing resources. And so, yeah, these travel plans were basically, they had a lot of different measures included in putting this plan into action, um, developing bike lanes, of course, but also, yeah, supporting walking, but also supporting making it easier to get to use public transportation like the bus. And so, yeah, that's an example of all these different objectives that they have. And it's the idea that it's not just reducing CO2 emissions, but there are other objectives, like those that are developed in collaboration with Miadevi Science Park, which are here. For instance, enabling children to travel independently, reducing noise pollution. This is not related directly to CO2 emissions. So it goes a bit more than just the environment in a way. It's all about developing a better way of moving around in Linköping. In 2017, the municipality, in partnership with the Miadevi Science Park, they launched this sustainable mobility challenge, because the idea was to enable or to improve travel for everyday people, but also especially for commuters getting to Miadevi and work. And so they wanted to develop a solution or some kind of service that would combine the different options from different transportation provider, and remove the fact of having to get a new ticket every time you change transportation provider, for instance, going from the bus to the bike. And the goal was to find a seamless service that combines these different alternatives and improve travel and thus reduce car usage. And this challenge was won in mid 2019 by Cutie, a Swedish transportation provider that developed a service, especially for commuters in Miadevi. And the idea was it was called on-demand ride sharing. And it was a service that would share and match on the same route with different vehicles. So some sort of minibus or big taxi where you would pick up different employees going in the same direction. And we can see here there is a bit in the vision for this challenge. There is already a bit of this mass system that was envisioned by the commune. And if we look a bit more at Cutie in particular, it means ride in Finnish. And so the first service that they propose, this is a list of their different features of their app or of their platform, because the idea is that Cutie is a infrastructure provider. They developed the app for different cities like Linköping. They are from the private sector, and they are kind of experts at developing this app. That would include different services like on-demand ride sharing, which is share and match service. But they have, of course, other features of this app, including, for instance, being a white labeled app where the city can just change the name of the app or other features that make them provider of mass platform, but not particularly of all services that are of all mobility services that are provided integrated in the app. So together, Cutie and the other actors involved in this sustainable mobility challenge, like Strongostaden, the landlord manager, the landlord property manager, Ostiota Trafiken, which is the bus company Linköping, and Miadevi Science Park and the municipality, and all of these actors from the public and private transportation sector, they decided that it's time to launch an app, to launch MAS in Linköping that would integrate all existing mobility services. And it's interesting to note that already then there is a mix of public and private actors in this development of this MAS. And that's what we find interesting to further study. And we are going to develop this further. It was a great success because out of the 200 people that tried the app over the 2 years, 93% of them found it very useful and they wanted to continue using it. Unfortunately, it stopped. It was planned to stop, but the project ended because most of what was interesting is that the people involved on the different actors, Chalmers was one of them, but the bike service, the bus service company, the taxi service, they didn't find an agreement. So one of the study that was following this project, they said that careful cooperation and collaboration between the key actors involved is required in order for such future project to succeed, meaning launch and actually survive, have a sustainable business model behind it. They need a sustainable business plan. So it was basically dormant for a few years and it's eventually relaunched into a new form, but it relaunched in Stockholm with some of the key actors present in Gothenburg already. Other than that, there is no other mobility as a service system in Sweden. So the idea with Linköping mobility as a service is not that people can use each mobility service independently, but to, like we said, combine them into a seamless way into one single service and one single app, sort of like a smorgasbord of transportation where you can just get and try everything. So we would have the bus and the train from the local transportation provider. We would have bike sharing, Lin Bike, it's called here in Linköping. We would have Lin Park that would be a partner to be able to park, for instance, peer-to-peer car rental cars, another mobility service that will be integrated. There is Ride the Future, which is an autonomous bus on the campus in Linköping and other areas. There is on-demand ride-sharing by local transport operators like Cutie that could develop this. There are, of course, e-scooters. We could have carpools, like if it's not Sunfleet, but some sort of the equivalent, or Volvo M. And you would have taxis, of course, that could be used because we don't have any Uber, for instance, in Linköping. So it is going to be an open and scalable platform that can handle the planning, a bit like what Google Maps sometimes looks like when it combines different transportation options that you have to change provider. But it would also include the payments. So you just pay once and you get a ticket that is valid on all different providers. And this should be, of course, safe and easy to use as an app, an easy interface. And another idea that where they want, so the project that I'm talking about is also to develop the business model behind it. That at the end of this 1.5 next 2 years, we would be able, or the city would be able to sustain this project from us. So it started in 2020, in January 2020, and by the end of next year, 21, it should be Ducaten, which is also a municipality owned, like a mix of public and private company. And Ducaten will be the operating organization that will continue to operate Linköping Mass at the end of these 2 years. So it is, again, pretty interesting to study the dynamics between all of these different actors. And the objective of Linköping Mass so far is to reach 5,000 test users when they would launch the beta app next summer, to reduce car ownership and travels by car, to reduce CO2 emissions from the transport sector, but also to increase equality and accessibility to mobility, so that more people can move around, to enable high mobility within the city and at an affordable cost, and to enable accelerated market introduction for new sustainable transport services by connecting them to the mass system and user base. That means, for instance, if in 2022 there is a new peer-to-peer package delivery company platform that want to join, it would be easy to join the mass system. Or if there is a new ride-hailing company, taxi company that could come into Linköping, it would be easy to integrate their API, their digital infrastructure, and hook it into the mass infrastructure here, so it can be easily introduced to the market of the project. And nowadays it is to the phase where they go into branding. So I should stop calling it Linköping Mass, but call it ZAP. And the idea is that, yeah, they want to turn ZAP into some sort of a new word where people would zap their way there in a seamless move. And that would be a bit the graphical identity of the app. Now we leave Karin take over the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Hugo. Now I will say a few words about the research that we perform and how we approach this case, SAP or Linköping Mass. In the project, we are responsible for contributing to the evaluation of Mass, and therefore it is interesting to highlight what Hugo mentioned in relation to the UBGO in Gothenburg, where they concluded that there is a need for a sustainable business model, where different stakeholders within the ecosystem collaborate and cooperate. To analyze this, we will use something called institutional logics. Institutional logics focus on institutions, but then what is an institution? Here we call Linköping Municipality an institution, and the Cutie is one institution, and the car-sharing firm or e-scooter firms are other institutions. By identifying the different logics that these different institutions base their practices on, like for example what they find as the problem, Hugo mentioned car travels and CO2 emissions, and how solutions to these problems are presented, it will be possible to analyze how the collaboration develop, and not the least where tensions or even conflicts arise. Institutional logics has previously been used for studying initiatives where stakeholders from private and public sectors collaborate to create new digital solutions, and that is the reason we think it will be useful here as well. To give some examples that we have already been able to see in this ongoing project, the following are relevant. The first one is what is called a sustainability logic. It's about reducing emissions by stimulating behavioral change and increased travel by public transport or bicycles. This logic is mentioned by several of the stakeholders. But there is also a market logic among firms who base their business idea on stimulating people to let their private cars and increase sharing. Why not let your car instead of having it parked? This logic stimulates increased car use. And yet another logic among the stakeholders is the public logic, which we find in Trafic, for example, the public transport company, who must make sure that residents' needs and demands are satisfied according to regulations for public services, for example in sparsely populated areas. So in our analysis we want to explore how these different logics influence the development of the mobility service This case study shows how the demand for mobility is identified and shaped in new markets and how different logics may coexist or conflict simultaneously between a great diversity of actors. We perform our case study with interviews and by following the collaboration between stakeholders at meetings and other events that are organized within the ecosystem. And then ambition is, of course, to contribute to management of tensions and the implementation of a fruitful collaboration. We learned from Hugo in Gothenburg that everyone in the ecosystem must collaborate. And here our argument is that everyone must collaborate even if their institution is influenced by different logics.
Thank you for watching this video of our research project. And if you have any questions, please just email us.